Okay, good evening, everybody. So glad you guys took the time to make it tonight. And we are going to be talking about diet and cancer. And I'm going to talk about it in a little bit different way, as you will soon see. And if I can get this thing to work, I think I can. Okay, that's just a little bit about me. Health and nutrition and just healing the body holistically is a passion of mine. So I'm excited to be here. But this is October. October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And what I notice when I look at all this stuff, I mean, it's so pretty. It's like, I want to have those pretty strawberries. They're pink and they're dipped in chocolate. And I want a mammogram. I mean, don't they look like fun? But the strawberries are treated with such toxic chemicals that are endocrine disruptors that are going to be causing you cancer. And the same with your mammograms. They're full of sugar, which of course feeds the cancer. So it's just actually ridiculous that we are trying to promote breast cancer awareness and raise funds by selling sugar and these types of products. And then, you know, let's paint our fingernails, and we're going to talk a lot about endocrine disruptors. And let's go out and buy some perfume and some beautiful skin lotions from these companies like Estee Lauder. And it's just infuriating to me because women see this and they make it so pretty. And cancer is like one of the ugliest things. And I don't know about you, but I had a dear friend of mine pass away from breast cancer. And it's ugly. It's horrible. It's tragic. And there's nothing pretty about it. But this is what's happened. We dress it up so it looks pretty, and we can go to a fun gala and get dressed up. So it's just, there's got to be a better way than these types of fundraisers and these types of things to promote awareness of breast cancer. So the question is, what do you feast on? And when I look at diet, I don't necessarily look just what you fill your belly with, which is of course important, but your body, your skin, and your mind and your soul. So what are you feasting on? And that's a big component, looking at the whole person. But what we're going to be focusing on tonight is endocrine disruptors. And endocrine disruptors do really horrible things. They mimic hormones. They turn one hormone on. They turn on signals, so there's premature cell death. So they do a lot of tragic things to the human body. And that's why it's so important to learn about endocrine disruptors, what they are, where you can find them, and then what you can do about it. So the end result of being exposed to endocrine disruptors is tumors and birth defects, developmental disorders, and the list is almost endless. I mean, it's pretty long, but we're here talking about cancer, focusing on that aspect of it. So hormones. Hormones, the way I like to describe hormones is, you've heard me talk about enzymes and how enzymes are the workers. So if you have a lot and you're going to be building a house, you know, which is like your body. So you're building this house. You need raw materials. You need, you know, the protein, the fat, carbohydrates. You need the vitamins. You need the minerals to build. The enzymes are the workers. If without enzymes, you cannot be building the house. Well, hormones are like the foremen. And they're the ones that point and say, okay, you go here, you do this, you do that. So we don't need a whole lot of hormones. They work in very small amounts. And when we start looking at endocrine disruptors, a very small amount is going to affect you. So it's important to be conscious about what we're putting in our bodies. So like I said, hormones work in very, very small doses. And because they work in such small doses, again, the effects that endocrine disruptors have on you, you don't need to be exposed to very much to have that tragic effect. Endocrine disruptors, a lot are found in petroleum products and plastics, and they accumulate in your body, especially in the fatty tissues. So because they accumulate there, they stay there, and they affect you for a very long, prolonged period of time. So first we need to go on an endocrine disruptor detox. And we're going to get into the whole thing about pesticides, but BPA, I don't know if you know, it's on a lot of receipts. And so your skin is the largest organ, of course, and you absorb a lot through your skin. So every time you touch a receipt that's got the BPA, you're absorbing the BPA. And then women, we all want to look beautiful, don't we? And we want those pretty lipsticks, and we want the beautiful hair. We want our hair to stay in place. Well, if you look at this poor woman here, from top to bottom, she is just slathering on so many chemicals that are endocrine disruptors. So for hairspray, there's phthalates in it. And the phthalates make the plasticky, the hairspray pliable. But there's phthalates also in anything that's got fragrance. So when you look at your product, look and see, is there fragrance in it? And if there's fragrance, you should probably put it back on the shelf. So nail polish has the phthalates in it, and it's got formaldehyde, it's got a whole host of other chemicals in it that we don't think of our fingernails as absorbing, but our fingernails do absorb. So all of this is like, living tissue, and we need to think about what we put on our bodies. So our lifestyle choices. The fatty foods, eggs and meats and cheese and milk, all of them have high concentrations of these endocrine disruptors. And the reason is, we'll get to a little bit later, but it's in the environment. And as I said a little bit earlier, when you consume endocrine disruptors, whether you are through eating, an animal or whatever, it is attracted to your fatty tissues. And so when we eat meat and when we have cheese and dairy, that's all high fat, and it collects there. But if you notice, another thing is we have this beautiful nonstick pan, and this is another place where we have endocrine disruptors. So these nonstick pans, you'll read the advertisements. They're completely safe according to the advertisements, but if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll see there's actually warnings. They want you, if you're going to be using one of these pans, use it away from small birds, because, a small bird could die. So if it has that effect on your small bird, I think it's got a little bit of effect on you as a human. So what we need to look at too is whether or not your groceries are making you sick. And I'm such a big, huge proponent of organic, and we're going to get into that a little bit. But I want to talk to you a little bit about GMOs, and GMOs from a different perspective. So I'm sure almost everybody here has heard about GMOs and how bad GMOs are for you and what they are. I'm not going to get into that perspective of it. The perspective I'm going to talk about is they genetically modify these so that they can withstand huge, huge quantities of pesticides and herbicides. The pesticides and the herbicides is what are the endocrine disruptors. There's so much toxic chemicals in all the pesticides, all the herbicides out there on the market, that it's really scary when we start to look at it. Now, the EPA is supposed to be there to protect us. However, the function of the EPA now is just to determine how much of a toxin your body can tolerate, rather than let's keep the environment, safe, and let's keep people safe. No, let's see how much can you tolerate? How much poison can you tolerate? So, atrazine. Atrazine is one of the main chemicals that is used out there on most of the conventionally grown produce. Now, for you men, this causes feminization. So, there was a scientist, this guy was brilliant, and what he did is he would do research, and he would go out into like swamplands where there was runoff of pesticides, and he noticed that the frogs were male frogs were turning into females. And I mean completely turning into females, where the male could then lay eggs. So not just, a little shift. This is a complete switch from male to female. So what happened, big industry didn't like this guy because he was exposing the truth. And what does big industry do when the scientists have, reports and evidence? They discredit the person. Exactly. They discredit him, and that's what they did. They discredited this poor man. People are learning now that what he's saying is actually the truth, but he's gone through hell. And he's gone through hell actually for all of us because he wants to protect us as people. So this is how the chemicals get into the animals and get into the water. So we have the planes, and the planes fly over the fields, and the pesticides aren't just in that little area. There's water nearby, there's aquifers, there's different ponds, and there's runoff. And the runoff goes, into the rivers and lakes and the ocean. And then, you have little Joe Blow who's there, and he just wants to keep his house nice and tidy. He doesn't want to have weeds in his front lawn and neighbors talking about him. And, he doesn't want to have bugs. So he's out there and he's spraying to make sure that his house is all nice and beautiful and clean and tidy. And that runs off as well. So this is how the chemicals get out there in the environment. So we're going to talk about some of the main endocrine disruptors. So there's the atrazine, which is a big one, and then the organophosphates. So organophosphates, this stems way back from the Nazi era. So the Nazis, it's actually a quite fascinating story, but the Nazis were actually brilliant scientists, and Hitler was really into technology and science. And they developed a lot of nerve gases, and they developed a lot of really potent chemicals that are lethal. And when the war was over, there was actually a fight to try and get the different scientists, into the different companies so that we could capitalize on their knowledge. But they had all of these nerve gases, and they thought, well, what are we going to do with all this? I mean, can't just throw it away. This is a waste. So they came up with a brilliant idea, and they said, why don't we make it into pesticides? And why don't we make it into, herbicides? And we've all heard what happened with Agent Orange. Well, Agent Orange stems right out of, the Nazi era. So one of the big organophosphates is malathion. And how many people have heard of malathion? So malathion is a chemical that we used to be able to just go to the Home Depot, go to the store, and we used to be able to buy it and spray it on our lawns. However, because it's so dangerous, we can't do that anymore. However, the government can come in, and because we have fruit flies and mosquitoes and things, a government can come in and they can spray. And as a matter of fact, they're going to be spraying in Santa Ana really soon. And they tell you, don't worry about it, just close your windows. You'll be fine, don't worry. So just close your windows. But what is so offensive to me is it is a prescription medication for head lice. And it's safe and effective, the way they promote it. So here we are having medical doctors prescribe a neurotoxin, an endocrine disruptor, so that you can put it directly on your child's head to get rid of head lice. And they promote it as safe and effective. I don't know about you guys, but this like really pisses me off. So, and what do? We trust our doctors. We trust their advice. And nobody wants to have head lice, so let's just go out and get malathion and put it on your kid's head. So phthalates. Phthalates is another big one. So it's a plasticizer, so it makes like hard plastic, the soft plastic. And I love this. It's used in pharmaceuticals. It's used for the coating. When you take like medication that's time released and they have that coating, it's used on that coating. It's used in children's toys. It's used in adult toys. It's used in shower curtains. It's used in upholsteries. I mean, this is ubiquitous. This is everywhere. And it's really important to look at this one and get this one out of your environment as much as possible. Perfume is a big one. And when I talk about perfume, I don't necessarily mean the kind that you just spray on, of course that, but when you buy your shampoo, look at your ingredient list. And if it says fragrance, this chemical does not have to be listed. So you're never going to see this on a label. But if you see fragrance, that's going to be there. It's going to be in there. And this again is drawn to fatty tissue. So if you are going to be eating meat and eggs and cheese, you've got to make sure that it's organic. That's not going to be a fail-safe way to make sure that you don't get it in your body that way, because our water's contaminated. And going back to the atrazine, I don't know if you've seen, there's water filters now that will say that it removes atrazine. Well, that is another thing that just pisses me off. Why the hell do I have to have a water filter that removes atrazine? Why can't we remove atrazine from our water? So anyway, little rant. PFCs, most of these words I can't even pronounce. They're way too long. But you will find this in nonstick cookware. So go through your cupboards. Get rid of your nonstick cookware. They will say that it's not in there, that it was used in the process to coat, to bind the Teflon to the pan. However, why do they have that warning about keeping your cookware, like not cooking near small birds? It's in water-resistant clothing and upholstery and things like that as well. So this is something also that does not break down. So it's just something, it's going to be there. It does not break down. So solutions. So let's talk a little bit about solutions, because I think everybody needs to know what's going on. Everyone needs to know how they can protect themselves and get this stuff out of their lives as much as possible. But we got to focus on solutions. So the first thing is going on an endocrine disruptor detox. And we always talk about detoxes. And I'm big on doing different detoxes and cleanses because I think they're really, really important for us. But we need to go like on a little vacation and get rid of them. So the first thing is knowing what's going into your shopping cart. So reading all your labels. And I mean all your labels. Labels on your skincare products, labels on your cleaning products. One other thing, this is something you're not going to buy at a grocery store, but clothing. And I'm into yoga. And there's a whole clothing line that uses recycled plastic. I don't want that plastic touching my skin, especially if I'm doing hot yoga and I'm like sweating. Like, that's just wrong. When we look at green products, I think that's another thing. We kind of think that, oh, it's green, so it's safe. And a lot of people look at that and they look at, you know, things being promoted as green, so they pull it off the shelf thinking it's safe, not really thinking it through. Green doesn't necessarily mean that it's safe. So having recycled products, it sounds great, but not if you're going to have recycled plastic bottles on, you know, as your pants. And then fragrances, that's a really, really big one. And then we talked about receipts. So a lot of stores now will let you give you the option of emailing the receipt, which is a good option. But grocery stores, things like that, just have them throw the receipt away. There's no need for it. They are coming out with receipts that are non-BPA receipts. And they're coming out with bottles that are non-BPA bottles. But beware, because they will promote something as BPA free, and then again, you look at that and you think, oh my God, that's great. Let me get that one. Let me get that food container that's non-BPA. And there's a whole line of products that are developed by Eastman Chemical, used to be Eastman Kodak. And there's a whole line of products called Triton. And the Triton products, they promote as BPA free. And it's the solution to having BPA in, you know, baby bottles and things like that. However, there's an individual, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he decided, look, I want to be an independent testing facility and I want to test different products. So he tested the Triton products, and he was finding out that the Triton products were more estrogenic than the BPA products. And so the Triton products are being used for baby bottles and, you know, pacifiers and nipples and baby toys and things like that. But they're worse. So the chemical industry is very, very influential. And what they've done is they've funded studies under names that sound like it's a, you know, independent organization. But they funded studies to show that Triton and other products of theirs are safe. Well, it's funded by or conducted by the industry. And so what they've done, for example, one of the things is they tested on rats. And they decided, okay, let's test on a rat and let's see if the rats, if it has an estrogenic effect on the rat. What they've done is they've gotten rats that it's a breed of rat that isn't very susceptible to hormones in that way. And so they're able to manipulate the study that way. And then they only give the good results over to the EPA. And then there's no law that requires a chemical company to get any prior approval before putting a chemical on the market. So when we hear about these new things coming out, I think it's really important to take a step back and not jump on the bandwagon and you know, get these products, and stick with what we know. We know glass is safe. Stick with glass.
Switching everything to glass.
Yeah. So one thing to be careful of, though, because I do a lot of jars, and the ball jars, a lot of them have BPA coating on that lid, that little plastic lid. So, but just be careful and spend a little bit of extra money. Take a little bit more care of your food, because it does take more care when you're carrying glass around. But when you think about it, it's becoming you. That food is becoming you. That drink, that water, whatever it is, that's your body, that's your cells, that's your brain. You know, that's you. And it also affects your emotions and your mind. So you're worth it. You're worth having a little bit extra money spent on you for glass containers. So eating organic. As we talked about a little bit earlier, the pesticides and herbicides, those are two huge sources of endocrine disruptors. And that's why it's so important to avoid the conventionally grown produce. We want the organic produce, plus we want it also because we want to create a bigger demand for organic. You know, there's not money for the chemical companies in organic, so there's not going to be a push by the chemical companies for the organic. The push is always going to be for chemicals. Chemicals are always going to be the solution. So take a stand and let's buy organic. Again, genetically modified, we talked about this. The genetically modified produce has way more herbicides and pesticides on it. And so they can be doused in these chemicals. And there's no way you're going to be able to wash it all off. And also, most of the genetically modified products are made into like oils and things like that. So they're put into the product. They're not something that you usually go and buy off of. I mean, you can buy, of course, soy and stuff off of the shelf, but you'll look at soybean oil, corn oil, things like that. They're already in the product. So read your ingredient list because, of course, here in California, there's no labeling. You don't have to label about GMOs. So if you see corn oil or something like that on the label, put it back on the shelf. Do your body a favor. Because again, remember, if you think, oh my God, you know what? I just love this product. It's cheaper. I'm just going to buy it. Remember, it's filled with endocrine disruptors, and we only need it in a small amount to affect our bodies. So be careful. Drinking plenty of fresh spring water, and not in one of these bottles. But drinking the fresh spring water is really important because the solution to pollution is dilution. So you want to dilute your body of the toxins. And then supplementing with enzymes. Enzymes are critical. Enzymes are the spark of life. And nothing can be done without enzymes. You can't blink an eye without enzymes. But enzymes are really important for your liver. Your liver is like the main factory, your detox factory. And we want to make sure that the liver is operating optimally. And we want to make sure that every body part gets the nutrients that it needs. Enzymes help your body to break down the nutrients so that you can absorb the nutrients that you need so you can have a healthy body. And then the green leafy vegetables. Most people don't eat enough green leafy vegetables, in a day. The best way is just put them in a smoothie. Put them in there, blend them all up. I mean, you can get, 5 servings in one drink. And this is like the best way to help. And green is something that it's detoxifying. The chlorophyll in the greens detoxifies your body. And then eating an antioxidant-rich diet. Antioxidants are crucial as well. They're important for your liver function. They're important for your eyes. They're important for maintaining a youthful appearance. I mean, I can just go on and on about antioxidants. Antioxidants are delicious too. So I love my berries. And then developing a healthy lifestyle. And this one, I think, is something that people really don't pay enough attention to. I mentioned I had a dear friend that died of breast cancer. And it was really sad because she decided that she was going to handle her breast cancer integrative. So she was doing some conventional, some holistic, and she was actually getting a lot better. She had a double mastectomy. She was on the road, to recovery, And her family lived in Connecticut. She lived here. And circumstances arose where she needed to go back home. She needed to go back to Connecticut. And her mother was elderly. And she was preparing everything, and she was looking good. And she was getting everything ready. In about 2 weeks before she was to leave and go to Connecticut and move there, her brother calls her up. And her brother tells her, you know what, I don't think you should come. Mom can't handle it. It's too much. It's too much for her. She can't handle it. My friend, from that point on, just like within a month, she was gone. She couldn't handle the rejection. But she never dealt with the emotional side. There's such an emotional component to cancers. You know, you hear about people that have cured themselves through laughter, and people that have cured themselves through, you know, looking in the mirror and telling themselves that they love themselves. I mean, there's all sorts of stories you hear about people curing themselves of cancer from an emotional perspective. And it's so key. And I think that's something that's overlooked, especially, you know, like in a community where we're very much attuned to what we put in our bodies and what we put on our bodies. Well, what is our mind feasting on? You know, we talked about food for our belly, we talked about food for our skin and our body, but food for our minds. And that, I think, is essential. And people have cured themselves of all sorts of conditions by their mindset. So start it now. Start developing that mindset now so that we can have a healthy, long life. So I'm an attorney. I think most of you guys know that. And I do a few things. I help people with birthing plans and vaccine exemptions. I give legal advice for healthcare practitioners, which I'm giving a talk this Sunday, and help people with personal injury cases. But I also have my practice where I help people to customize their own like anti-aging lifestyle and help them to develop, help them learn how to detox from all aspects. You know, detox what's in their pantry, detox what's in their kitchen, you know, under their sink and in their bathroom, and also with the healthy lifestyle. So thank you. Let's heal ourselves one bite at a time. And thank you everybody for coming. Thank you.